previous Tuesday, the same day I got the announcement for the meeting, and it said for me to furnish a resume. Well, it was too late to do that, so just by way of introduction, if you don't know me, I'm Mike Smith. I live in Middlesex. I'm retired Army, National Guard, about 28 years. And the National Guard was part-time, so full-time I sawed lumber for 15, 18 years. Sawed about 7 million board feet in 15 years. And along the way, I kept throwing away big walnut slabs, sawing for customers, and I said, there's got to be a way. I wasn't a turner, and I'm still not a turner. There's evidenced by this redwood ball, which is dated November 3rd, 2005. But anyway, that's how slow I am at this. And so somewhere along the way, I met up with a guy who sold on eBay, and I got hooked up with him, and the first thing we ever did was cut up an ambrosia maple log in my side yard, and that started it, and that was about 2004, I guess, or something like that. So I'm just bored stiff, sitting at home, or going out and playing golf, or swimming, or running, or walking, or something. I'm just not into those kind of physical activities. I just like to tow around big giant pieces of wood and logs and cut them up on the sawmill. I have access to 3 wood misers. One is in Oregon. I took it to Oregon because in North Carolina, the guy who used to run it for me kept wanting to borrow it, and I got fed up with that, so I took it to Oregon. And there's one at Finch Nursery in Bailey. I use that one. For the last year, I've had a sawmill from my nephew in South Carolina who took a full-time job, and his company wouldn't let him saw lumber part-time until he finished going to school, because they were paying him to go to school. So I've got one sitting in my yard too, right outside the chop saw. So I just like working with wood, and it's kind of, if you ever come out there, it's kind of crazy. I was in the woods today, getting cedar logs in Virginia, and hauled them all the way home, and those will be sawed next week for a friend of mine, but I'll saw some of them for turn blocks. And as crazy as I am, I'm going back to Virginia tomorrow to get the rest of them. So I just won't turn down a really neat log. I get most of my logs at a sawmill, but I do get some from loggers. And there's so much stuff going to waste that's just not funny. Tree service guys are a good source that they'll let you work with them. Most of them won't let you work with them. So anyway, so that's pretty much my background. I'm a military retiree. My wife's a retired school teacher, so I really just sell wood for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to go to the West Coast in the summertime. Because I cannot deal with this. It's gotten to the point now, I'll be 70 in March. I cannot live in North Carolina in the summertime and do anything. I can't do anything. I'm just completely withered out. By 10 o'clock, it's time to change shirts. By 12 o'clock, it's time to change shirts again, and I'm just completely worn out. So about 5 years ago, I became a West Coast snowbird, and I just drive to the West Coast. And it's been June, July, and August in the West Coast. And where there's no humidity, if you've never been there, it's absolutely wonderful. No humidity, and temperature's about 85 degrees in Salem, Oregon. So if you want something from me, you have to get it before then. So don't nominate me for any of these posts that they're going to elect next month, because I won't be around to do y'all any good in June, July, and August, and maybe September. This past year, if you don't know my personal situation, we were getting ready to come home from Oregon. Got a phone call from the people who are watching the house saying, "Did you have a TV in the basement?" I said, "Sure. I watch it when I'm turning on my lathe." Well, I caught fire. So we had a spontaneous fire in the house just as we would get ready to come back from work. And we're not in the house yet. And as it turns out, the fire blazed up and eventually melted a water line, and the water line put the fire out. So all we have is smoke damage to the tune of $125,000. That's what it's going to cost to fix the smoke damage. So they're going to completely redo the interior of my house, including the basement, new paint, finish the floor, refinish the floor, seal the basement walls, seal the rafters, new insulation in the basement, fix the floor joist. There's no structural damage. We put it out just, it must have been within 5 minutes of flaring up, because a couple floor joists are black. And they're going to give me a new house. I'm going to put vinyl siding on and try to sell it and move to Oregon for 6 months out of the year and live here for 6 months out of the year. That remains to be seen. It's taken on. They really haven't done a whole lot in 4 months, quite frankly. But they finally are doing it. So anyway, so what I do is I go out and get wood. I process about 25 to 30 species a year. Some of it is something like Bradford pear. You don't get Bradford pear very much, and I don't get it very much, but I've got 2 logs laying in the yard right now that the tree service guy dropped off. If you don't already know, Bradford pear is a sticky little wicket to play with, but it's all curly. I've never seen a non-curly Bradford pear. And I got a few pictures to show you the one log laying in the yard. It spalks nicely too, really spalks nice, and it won't rot like some of these other woods try to spalk them. They rot before they spalk. So it's just, I just like working with wood, and within the last week I brought in ash logs, I brought in ambrosia maple logs, I brought in cedar logs today. Tomorrow I'm going to get another ambrosia maple from the woods. I'm just crazy. I mean, I just got more wood than one man has the right to own, I guarantee you. Those are my buckets there. I could fill 1,000 of those buckets up. I got so much wood. And that's not the wood that's not even cut up yet. So I just want to, that's who I am. I kind of like to start with just very basic, because some of us don't really understand. So I'll just start this, and y'all are guinea pigs because I've never done this before. If somebody told the Heater Club, and they've asked me to come here and do the same thing. So once I learn how to run that computer, I'll be able to do this better. It's been an experience trying to move pictures back and forth from folder to folder. Let's just start with a tree. Tree standing up. You cut it down. So what do you expose? You expose the end grain. Okay? Tree is always going to dry out faster from the end grain than it is the side grain. The end grain is where you cut crossways, the side grain is up and down. The first thing you should always do is seal your wood. Because the tree doesn't consist of anything but cellulose and water. Now there may be some minerals or something there, I don't really know, but that's basically what you're dealing with. And if you're dealing with 2 types of water in a tree, does anybody know what they are? Science calls it free water,
and extracellular,
which is the water between the cells, and bound water, which is the water inside the cells. So which water is going to come out first? The free water. All right, well, it's going to just crack like crazy. So you need to seal that up. If you don't seal that up, those cracks get worse and worse and worse. When you seal those up, you can seal it with paint, you can seal it with anchor seal or a generic product. I seal everything I do with paraffin. And I seal them completely, but I cut them up into blocks. And if you don't do something with it soon, the side grain is going to crack too. The next, because the water is going to try to go somewhere, because wood is considered to be a hygroscopic material, which means it tries to reach equilibrium with the environment. So you put it in the attic, it's going to try to get as dry as your attic. You put it in your shop, it's going to try to get as dry as your shop. You leave it outside, it's going to try to get, it's not going to stop until it reaches equilibrium. And as it loses that water, it's going to try to crack. So, you know, you just can't, guys will ask me, well, I just seal the ends and I put it in the shop. Well, that's okay. But something like cherry, something like black walnut, it'll check laterally right through the sapwood if you're not careful. Now, you got to remember, I'm not an expert at this. I'm only telling you what I've experienced. And you may say, I've had a piece of black walnut in my shop for 7 years and there's no cracks in it. And I'll tell you, that's probably true. That's probably true. Because we've all worked with wood, and every piece of wood is different. From cherry to cherry, it's different. There's about, gee whiz, I ran into a cherry tree in Oregon last summer. I had no idea what kind of cherry tree it is, but the guy had made one cut on it, and it was obviously cherry grain, it looked cherry, and it stunk. It didn't smell sweet like cherry, it stunk. And we never figured out what it was, but it was an ornamental cherry of some kind. It had burls all over. It's pretty neat. But, you know, maples, there's like 200 maple trees in the United States, varieties of maple. Red oaks, 21 varieties of red oaks. I'm doing these numbers off the top of my head because I don't have access to my books because my house is packed up in South Carolina somewhere. I'm trying to get the smoke out of it. So I would seal your wood. If you go to the trouble of cutting it down and collecting it, why don't you seal it? In Oregon, the guy I stay with lets the whole club put all their wood gathering behind the clinic. It's got a veterinary clinic. And they go to all the trouble to split it, collect it, put it behind the clinic, and they don't never wax a piece. So somebody's already been given it for firewood because they just, so if you're going to go to that effort, you know, wax it. All right, let's talk about anytime you want to speak up, be my guest. Y'all know how different kind of woods are. So if you want to speak about it, I want to talk about some defects in wood. I think everybody knows about the heart check. You know, you got to really be lucky to put a heart check in a piece of turning and not have it crack. You got to just be plain lucky. Normally, you want to turn out the heart check. You've seen those videos where they take a log and they cut it right slam through the middle. And then when you turn it, the inside becomes the bottom, and you turn the heart check out. And you might get lucky and leave it in there, and I don't know if I've ever done it or not. So the heart check is one of your biggest problems. Another defect, what's the heart check? Every hardwood log that I've ever seen has got a, that's the log, and these are growth rings coming right from the heart. It's going to be a check. I've seen a cherry log that was 24 inches in diameter. That crack was 12 inches long. What a pain to work around.
Have you ever seen that the day the tree was cut?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Lots of times.
What causes the?
It's just the way it grows.
Does that mean the tree went through hard times or something?
No. Every hardwood I've ever seen, it looks like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the longer it lays, the more obvious that will get. Same way the longer a hardwood tree lays, if it really dries out a lot, you'll think it's got ring shake in it. So I appreciate that lead in about ring shake. Does everybody know what ring shake is? You really ought to know what ring shake is. It can be a real serious problem. You see this crack? That's not normal to the wood. Okay? This particular tree, I'll pass this around. If you follow that, that follows the growth ring. And when you put this on the lathe, this is liable to break right down that whole growth ring. Okay? I don't care how much damn super glue you put in it, it will start going, whoop, 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 and it'll fly apart. That can be a serious problem. And usually I find ring shake in woods that don't normally grow around here, and one of them is walnut. Walnut best grows in Iowa, in the Midwest, grows best up there. It will grow in North Carolina, and we all probably have them in our yards. But they sit there and shake in the wind, back and forth, and the growth rings separate. And you won't know it until you cut the tree down and you look at the end of it, and there will be these ring cracks that follow the growth rings. Okay. I've got a cherry log, pictures in my camera, I didn't get that downloaded. I got a cherry log in my yard that Jim made a special effort to bring me. It's 2 feet in diameter. And it's burl from the top to the bottom. And I bet you if you look at the end of it, you'll count 10 ring shakes in that thing. I just won't saw it up. I keep thinking somebody will come up with a system to keep it together, because it's a pretty log. but it's shook all to pieces. Cherry is real bad for it. The problem in North Carolina, in my opinion, is that in our part of the state, the sweet gums and the maples grow so fast that the things like cherry and walnut, which grow a lot better in Pennsylvania, Iowa, places like that, they try to grow down here and they can only get started in the edge of the fields. And that's where all the wind is. It's on the edge of the fields. So beware of ring shake. This particular piece grew in Florida. And we know this tree is not native to Florida. But that's the only piece of red eucalyptus I've ever seen it in. This tree is native to, I think it's native to either to Australia. Australia. Yeah. There are 12 species of eucalyptus in Florida, they tell me. Some particular woods have a lot of bark pockets, as you all know. Big leaf maple is probably the worst. It's really barky, and burls are they just dive in and out, in and out. And let me see if I can find a piece of big leaf maple.
Keep coming.
Yeah.
Next to the line.
There's a piece of big leaf maple. And this doesn't have any, well, there's an included bark pocket right there. You don't know where that goes. It's not going to be difficult to turn at all. That bark pocket will eventually fall out as a piece of bark. But big leaf maple there's no other wood like it in North America. But and it's easy to turn. If you haven't turned it, you should. I actually bring back logs from there. And let's see, we'll talk about big leaf maple in a minute. More to it. Let me see. Anybody got any questions about defects? Okay.
How about bugs?
Bugs? Well, bugs are more active in the summertime, the spring, summer, and the fall than they are the winter. Okay? I've got big leaf maple logs that have got bug damage in them because they've been there for over a year. Okay? Most bugs that we encounter like green logs. We don't turn pine, but pine is a real good example. You cut down a pine tree in June, in 10 days, you can hear them eating the pine tree.
Oh, yeah.
If you walk out there, sound like a pair of scissors going through your pine logs. Okay?
They get big too.
Yeah, they get about something like that.
Yeah.
Now, they won't bother that pine log if you cut it down in the wintertime because they're not active. And the same way with other woods, if you cut them down in the wintertime, they're not active. But bugs can be a problem. This is surprisingly enough, we're going to talk about small picking in a minute. This
Black and Decker bug.
This particular log was a log that came out of a lady's yard, and I said I want the bottom of it, and I want you to, if you would, get your husband to take it to the woods. So they dragged it to the woods for me. I spalled all my pecan in the woods. Okay. Well, this particular, so I left it there for a year. We went back 2 years ago and pulled it out, and this was on one side of the log. The side that was close to the ground all looks like this. And I got about 20 or 25 pieces. I never sold one. But you can't turn it. It's so fragile. You might be able to turn it if you're super sharp something, but I've been trying to figure out how to turn this sucker. And I can't figure out how to turn it.
Really fast.
One of the problems is it's got frays in it where the bug ate it. All right? And I spent 1 hour, this is true, 1 hour trying to get the frays out of a block of wood. And it just continued to come out, it never stopped.
High pressure air.
Well, you get high pressure, you're going to mess this block up.
Yeah, that's true.
So as far as bugs go, you don't have to worry about platypus beetles because most wood in the wild is not going to have platypus beetles in it. It's got to be really dry for platypus beetles. Other bugs, I wouldn't worry about them. I don't ever worry about them. People you can use the phrase, well, how did you get those bug holes in that piece of wood? Boy, they're really hard to train to get them to do that. You can train them to do that. But they don't detract, in my opinion, they don't detract from a piece of wood. It's just part of nature.
The only way I think they detract is when you're turning and you get a spray of black ants up your face.
Oh, well, yeah.
You're kind of annoyed.
Or you get one of these larvae and cut him all to pieces.
Yeah.
Is that pecan, Mike?
Yeah. That's pecan. I got about, I don't know, 20. I got a piece of this. It's 3 by 3 by 12. It's a peppermill blank, and I can sit there and flex it in my hand. And I don't know what to do with it. It's just a really neat piece of wood. It was somebody said tonight I should fill it full of water and freeze it and try to turn it frozen.
Yeah. That was that.
I keep thinking that eventually somebody will come out with something that you can soak this in and then turn it and will provide the support for all the holes.
You know,
And then you can melt it out.
fill a hole for
Yeah.
Well, that just makes it stronger.
You just soak them in acrylic.
It might work, but yeah, you can soak in acrylic, but still, you know, the frazz is I don't know. But I personally don't worry about the bugs. If I'm turning a piece and I think it's got bugs in it, I asked Bill Wallace, I said, what do you do about the bugs in the wood, Bill? He said, I just stick it in a plastic bag, put it in a barrel and seal it up and put a pest,
No pest strip in it.
not a pest strip, but one of those cans that, for roaches that you just spray them, you set them off and leave them in your house or something.
Yeah.
He said he puts one in a plastic bag, and I guess he's never had a problem with it. So I've done it a couple times. But even with ambrosia maple, you cut ambrosia maple in springtime, all those bugs that made all those holes are still in there.
Yep.
And you know, 2 or 3 weeks later, you see these chimneys all over your wood. I don't worry about them.
And the other wood in the shed starts having the
Sure.
go right in.
If you're getting them in the shed, it's probably, you might think about powder post beetles then, because that's dry wood. The beetles that attack ambrosia maple only attack green wood. So just as soon as that wood dries out, they die. There are so many beetles in this world. I read in a brochure about pine one day. We talked about beetles in pine forest. And there were pine beetles that literally, several species attack the bottom third of the tree. Other species attack the middle third of the tree. And other species attack the top of the tree. Teamwork, yeah, and that's you know that's what they say.
Yeah.
So I don't know that. Okay, so I wouldn't worry about worms. I just wouldn't. I mean, they're there. I've put them in a microwave before and had them come crawling out like crazy.
Oh, yeah.
That's fun to watch. If you like cruelty to insects, that's fun to watch. Because they'll come out like they don't. Some of them come out. But the ones that don't come out will push the sawdust up as fast as they can push it up. And you can sit there and look through the microwave lens and watch the pile go straight up as the bug tries to get out. Yeah. Okay, let's see. I tell you, I had a lot of trouble trying to organize this stuff. But the first thing that's on the slides is ambrosia maple. That's one of my favorite woods. That's the...
Okay.
Ambrosia maple is a good turning wood. It's going to warp. Almost every wood is going to warp. There's actually 1 or 2 woods that don't warp, and I'll talk about those. But, turns well. This particular sample has got really massive ambrosia. It's just as easy to get into a log that's got no ambrosia. Ambrosia maple log is nothing but an eastern maple. Those things are referred to as flags. And eastern maple, red maple, it's all the same thing. Eastern soft maple, it's all the same thing. You get a log like this about 1 out of 400 trees. And I spent a lot of time at the sawmill going down piles of logs. I mean, they're just stacked up 12, 14 feet tall, walking down the logs and trying to pick out a log that looks like this. It's not hard to pick it out. What's really hard is when you find one you like, many times it only goes 3 feet, but the log is 10 or 12 feet long, so you got to go around the other side of the pile and try to figure out which log you like on this side. And you wind up sticking bottles on top of it, and so you can see through the holes. And, but these are hard, they're hard to find. I found a nice one today, and it was in the woods. It was going to go into the chipper, going to go to pulpwood. And so they are difficult to find. And just, so you need to look at both ends to try to, you guys and ladies wouldn't be too concerned about that, because if you get 3 foot off the end, it's really massively figured. You'd be real happy with that. You could get a dozen, 15, 18 bowls. But I don't do that. I try to get a log that's heavily figured on both ends. That way I know the worms go all the way through it. I mean, you might get a few worm holes on that end or flags, but it's just something you have to deal with. Let's go some more. What do I do, Glenn?
Arrow key.
Okay. There's a round one. That kind of gives you an idea what that thing is going to look like. See, you don't, some of these streaks, like that streak there and this streak here, that streak there, they don't even show up in the middle. So when you're turning a piece of ambrosia maple, you're going to get a lot more figure, chances are, than you see at the very top of the piece. Wrong button. There we go. That's a typical block that I sell. You can see the flags on the end. That's
Are those flags always radiated from the center in that pattern?
away from the center. No, not really.
They look like all the pictures you're showing, they're like coming out from the center.
Well, they probably, I never thought about it. I don't think so. Because here's, I mean, yeah, they got the angle, but these two here don't come from the center.
Yeah.
They might look like they come from the center.
Direction. I'm just wondering if they're always.
It's hard to find what causes this. There's a lot of thought. Some people say that's a fungus that the beetle creates or farms while it's in the tree. This happens to the live tree, not the dead tree, the live tree. Okay. And there's bugs. There's bugs somewhere in those 5 holes. Maybe on the previous piece, maybe in that piece. But that happens to the tree while the tree is growing, and it does not hurt the tree. And some trees will be absolutely pure white. So that's a really heavily figured piece right there. That's what I strive to get.
Mike, when you wax them, does the white stay white like it is here? Or?
Yeah, I didn't cover that. The sapwood is the only place where you have moisture in trees, generally speaking, because that's the only thing that's alive. The heartwood is dead, so it doesn't have much moisture in the heartwood. Well, if you cut a tree, any tree, a pine tree, a maple tree, an oak tree, a Bradford pear tree, if it's got sapwood and you cut it in the summertime, it's going to stain blue or gray. If you cut it in late fall, when the fungus really doesn't, it's not very active above like 65 degrees. So you can cut it in the wintertime and that will stay white. But if I cut that in the spring, that will turn blue in a couple of days.
You mean below 65?
It only grows above 65 degrees. So I may have said it wrong. So this piece, it won't stay, to answer your question, it won't stay white unless it's done in the wintertime. And there's enough time there for the sugar that was in the sap to convert to something else that the fungus won't eat. The fungus...
So the wax coating won't keep it from turning?
No, it just keeps all the stuff in.
It just keeps the cracks out?
This particular fungus I'm talking about, I don't know what the scientific name is, but we're breathing it every breath.
Oh, yeah.
It's all over the world. So when I cut that thing, all I'm doing is seeding fungus spores all the way through the wood. And then when I chop it into blocks, I'm seeding them again. That's one of the biggest problems with holly. You're just seeding spores. So then if you wax it and seal those spores in, I don't think 275 degrees is what the wax is when I use it. I don't think that will kill that fungus. It's only in there just for a couple seconds.
Okay.
So you can keep it white if you cut it the right time of the year. Yeah, but if you cut it in March, you probably can't keep it white because it's going to get hot too fast.
So general rule would be cut trees in winter time.
If you want to prevent blue fungus,
Right.
blue-gray fungus. Yeah.
I know.
And early because they're living on the sugar in the sap, or they're living on something that resembles sugar in the sap, whatever the trees, use for nourishment.
Right.
And when you kill a tree, that sugar turns to something else. Starch, I think. I don't know. But they won't eat starch. They don't like starch. They like the sugar.
So you have to keep the log cold until that transformation occurs.
Keep the log cold.
Yeah. I mean, cut
You
down
could try it. Because you're laughing.
I know people
But-
put wood in freezers.
I've got
This guy, somebody puts wood in freezers?
I got all in the freezer.
Mike does too.
I also heard that
I'll talk about
the
that.
time to cut a tree to save the bark, if you want to do a bark edge, would be in winter time as well.
That's, generally speaking, that's probably true.
Okay,
In this,
Getting back to the keeping it cold. All right, I cut the tree down, it's 40 degrees out. If I take that tree, cut it into a hunk, bring it into my shop,
No.
coat it, and let it sit there, it's gonna turn blue.
maybe, if it's gonna get warm before the sugar converts, yes.
But if I leave it outside for a couple of weeks first, gives the sugar time to convert, then bring it inside, it should be okay.
You'd probably be better. It'll probably be better. The longer you can leave it cold, the better off you'd be.
Before you wax it or after you wax
But
it?
it ain't,
Could
it
you wax
doesn't,
it
it's
cold?
not gonna matter whether you,
After
before or
waxing.
after waxing.
You have
You have to wax it, yeah. But wood is wood. I mean,
Okay.
I had some you know what Allianthus, Allianthus altisma is? It's called Tree of Heaven. George Kilmer wrote a poem about it in New York City. I had a whole stack of that stuff outside underneath the eaves of my building. And when I got around to cutting that up, that was the most beautifully spalted wood you've ever seen. But I could not duplicate it. Things with wood are really, there's not many hard and fast rules other than the fact that wood contains cellulose and water. There's not much past that. There's our block, and this particular ambrosia has got some bird's eye in it right here, and some bird's eye up there. It's pretty difficult to find bird's eye ambrosia.
My question, you were talking about the keeping the log cold and all that. I've seen at these large sawmills where they have a tremendous number of logs on the yard. They're either spraying them or they have them in a pond. Now, what are they preventing? It cracking or?
They're preventing fungus from growing, for one thing, because they only water them in the summertime or put them in the lake in the summertime. So they're preventing them from drying out, and they're preventing fungus from growing on them. And they got to keep them cool. That's the only way they can keep them cool is to. So every log in that pile is seeing running water. And running water is going to keep them cool.
Okay.
But a lot of sawmills don't even do that anymore around here. And they don't do that out west because it's not hot enough. And there's a lot of places around here that don't do that anymore. It's pretty expensive to do that.
They're doing it also because they're going to make plywood, so they're slitting it.
Well, it's still to keep the logs fresh.
Right.
That's
Keep moisture in.
yeah, they're just trying to keep them fresh. They don't want them to dry out. And then when they take the water off of them, they got to literally saw them up within 7 days or they'll start to check. I don't know what it is. I guess it's just wood, but if you put wood, let's say you've probably seen them pull those logs up from the Great Lakes and other places they pull them up.
They're old.
They got to saw them right away because the tree is dead and it's been dead for centuries or more. There's no bound water in that log. It's all free water because all the cells have given up all their water, or I should say the cells have collapsed. So there's no cell walls to hold the water, and it's all free water. And they got to cut them. I know at Brick Sawmill, when it was operating in Bun, they would cut the water off and they would start cutting that pile that afternoon. Because the very thing they were trying to prevent, they'll start checking, in days. It's just kind of amazing.
So how long does it take to sit underwater for all of it to go from bound water to free to be totally free water?
I don't know. I got no idea.
Might depend on species, or
Might
any number of
depend on
things.
the log.
The temperature of the
I
water.
never heard that question show up in any of the books. And I'm not saying I'm an expert, so don't think I am. I'm just telling you what I believe. But I get most of my logs at a sawmill in Inez, They didn't water last year because they quit cutting grade lumber. There wasn't much of a market for grade lumber. Most sawmills will, if you send them a whole tractor trailer load of logs, they'll pick out the best logs to saw for grade lumber. Logs that have no knots or one knot on them. And they'll saw that for grade lumber because they get a lot more money for grade lumber than they do for pallet lumber or vegetable box lumber or survey stakes. And that sawmill, he just started cutting survey stakes out of every damn thing that comes into the sawmill. It's a shame. You see these nice, beautiful 2-foot diameter red oak logs, as clear as a bell, and you just cut boards out of it and make survey stakes. But that's the market he developed in the recession, and it's still with him. He sends survey stakes all the way as far as Hawaii. And he makes it work. He makes them take poplar, sweet gum, everything. He cuts everything in the stakes. So, that's a pretty nice stack of ambrosia. I get big money for that. I don't send, I do have some wholesale customers, and one of them is Craft Supplies. If you buy ambrosia maple from Craft Supplies, it came from me. But I don't send them anything this good. And he doesn't want anything that good because this is a rare showing of really nice ambrosia blocks, and you just don't get that many of them. So if they started sending out stuff like this, they'd have to send it all the time, and they'd lose customers over it. Those are some 4x4s, pretty nice 4x4s, good for boxes. And that's more ambrosia. You can see these have changed color a little bit, and there's probably more brown or more blue than the white pieces over there. This wood does funny stuff. I mean, it changes colors under the wax. It spalts under the wax because you seal in the moisture, and sometimes it spalts under the wax. It's really strange stuff. More ambrosia. Those are really nice blocks there.
I think I asked this when you were showing your dipping process, but is there a reason you wax the entire piece versus just the ends?
Not really.
Okay, it's easier.
Well, it's easier, but you know, I'd use less wax if sometimes I dip the ends of dry blocks only. So I just let them dip the whole block. Most cases.
Mike.
Yeah.
When some of that wood is probably pretty wet when after you cut it.
Oh yeah.
Doesn't that paraffin spit?
It'll stick right to it.
No, well, I was wondering,
Like a deep fryer.
you dip water in a deep fryer, and man, it'll.
If you put a block in there that's really wet, sometimes in the summertime, when I'm trying to, I guess, get caught up or whatever, even now, when I cut blocks at the chop saw, I put them in buckets like that, and I seal the bucket. I put the lid on the bucket. Well, that's giving off moisture, and when I take that lid off, there's moisture dripping off that lid. But the blocks are not checking. But they're giving up some moisture, but they're not checking. So then sometimes that creates a wet block. And when I put that wet block, I dip it into the wax, it'll start popping.
That's what I thought.
Not with just 3 or 4 seconds or something like that. But yeah, they'll pop. But the wax it'll stay on it.
So the wax must be different than hot oil,
Well, it's 275 degrees paraffin.
It's a lot cooler. It doesn't fly the steam.
It's above the boiling point of water.
Not to the extent.
Not like hot oil.
Huh?
Hot oil's around 400 degrees.
Oh, we don't ever get it that hot. This paraffin will start smoking at about 300, a little over 300 degrees. So I don't even have to use the thermometer. I know it's already too hot. Now in Oregon, we got a waxing pot in Oregon that I leave out there, and it stays pretty much outside interiors, but it's got a lid on it. But somehow water gets in it, and when I crank that thing up when I go to Oregon, it pops and spits and kicks for a couple hours. And that's the water at the bottom boiling out of it. That's pretty common. Let me see. I thought I had a piece of ambrosia to pass around. First piece I look for, I'll have. But that's all right.
Where's third from the left? Third from the end.
Third from the right.
Third one that was it. There you go.
That's probably about the grade I sent to Craft Supplies. Here's just these are some spalted spindles of ambrosia maple. This was a tree that just about went too far. And I sent them to a guy in Florida, and he said, I'm making 15 pepper mills a day, and I can't take the time to super glue them. Okay, they won't, for some reason, it will not show the other pictures. Okay, let's go.
Probably the last picture in that.
No, there's 2 more pictures there, but your laptop won't show it, and mine won't either.
Okay, so we go to the next folder.
Yeah, go to the next folder.
While we're doing that,
Yep.
have you done any experimenting with the spalting in the Rubbermaid buckets by using the spalted shavings? Okay.
Okay, this is big leaf maple. This is really my favorite wood. These are burls, and these are big leaf maple burls. I probably took this picture to send to somebody who wanted some burl. And I got a lot of pictures of big leaf maple. You're going to be really impressed with what the burls look like. It's kind of hard to find the ambrosia maple burls, although I can find them. This is a big leaf maple burl. You can just pass that around. This is pretty typical. You can get that at 15, 16, 18 inches in diameter. These maple trees grow in eastern Oregon. They grow in Canada. I don't think they grow in Washington. Okay. And the joke out there is you don't have a maple tree without a burl on it. This past summer, where my sawmill is sitting, this guy buys burls. We would have got the rest of them, but we just can't pick them up. They high top the trees at 5 feet. Cut them down 5 feet above the ground, and what's left standing is all burl. And the loggers don't like that because they can't cut those logs and stack them on their trailer. They won't stack right. So sometimes the owner will tell them to cut the burls off and stack the logs or whatever. But it's just, I'll show you in a minute. There's a typical log. Here's the log. This is one monster burl, 2 burls on that particular thing. I probably have already sawed up this log. It's all burl at that end. You can see them popping off. There are some that the loggers have cut off. See how it's flat up there? I don't cut them off with a chainsaw. I cut them off with a sawmill. So I didn't do that. Just look how bubbly that thing is. They don't even look like logs.
So how did you cut that one right there?
I just put them on the sawmill and try to orient so that I get the fewest square edges on the side of the burl. I mean, sometimes I spend 30 minutes looking. I said, "You're crazy as hell. Just cut this damn thing," because you just can't. I'll show you one in a minute. Okay.
Where do you start?
This was on Craigslist in Oregon. Okay. That thing is 8 feet in diameter.
Did you buy it?
He wouldn't take my offer. Plus, I looked at this thing and I said, you know what? This thing will take 2 weeks to cut up.
How much did you offer?
$600. He said been offered $1,700. It's worth 10 grand. It's easily worth $10,000.
Really?
Yeah. This is all complete bird's eye everywhere around this thing, except for right there where the trunk is. I got another one on it. That's another. This was in the way of a house. It's all solid bird's eye. It's just amazing. This is a typical blanket. That's like the one you're passing around. Let's see. I got a couple more to pass around. This is a big leaf maple burl done by a friend of mine, Jim Baldinger. This piece I broke sitting behind my truck in Oregon. I bought this in Oregon. This is mostly curl and bird's eye. Get that piece with it. Those are just so common in Oregon, it's not even funny. They're just everywhere. And I bring back the logs. But you can see that piece has been planed. You can see where I had waxed it and then I'll put it through the planer. Look at that. That's just, these are all 12-inch rounds. See all the different kinds of figure you got? So I've got this strange looking fiddleback figure here. The rest of it's all bird's eye. There's more strange looking. They're just,
That's cut
We
through
have
the tree or,
huh?
that's cut along the vertical of the tree or across?
Oh, yeah.
Across grain?
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
You're looking at end grain, is that correct?
No, you're looking side grain. These things are growing on the side of a tree like a cancer. And so when I saw it just like I saw any other log. I laid it on the sawmill and just cut through the burl. There's no other way to do it.
Do you
Some
have
of them,
more or less of the same problems with checking and cracking?
no, they will check. Some of the burls will check. I keep them so. Okay, this particular burl here, this is all burl. This is another burl. I offered him this guy $600 and he never called me back. And this has been sitting on the strider for 2 years. And he stopped me at McDonald's one day when I was hauling wood. That's how big it is. They're pretty much unbelievable. I mean,
It's like a heart.
you just don't have anything like that growing in North Carolina. You can find some soft maple, red maple, ambrosia maple. You can find some bird's eye logs. This doesn't have any ambrosia. But you can look at this piece. This piece I rough turned in January the 12th, 2006. But look at that figure in that piece of wood. And that's rare. The other problem is that the loggers in North Carolina don't care anything about this at all. In Oregon, the reason it works in Oregon is that the loggers were carried to the chip mill to be chipped. And the chip mill will lay them aside and try to get 5 times what they paid the loggers for, which is still a good deal. But they'll sell it to me for 4 to 5 times what they paid the loggers for. I saw the sheet one day when I went into the office to pay my bill. It was laying right there on the thing, and I just happened to read it.
Just happened.
Just happened to read it.
Whenever you find a good time to take a break, let me go.
Okay, we'll do it right for this. Look at that log. That log is sitting in front of my sawmill. You know, and this burl goes all the way around. That burl goes all the way around, and that burl goes all the way around. The only way to get them off as perfect burls is to cut them off with a chainsaw. But I'm not doing that. So I put them on the sawmill and I just make a cut. Hit 90 degrees and make another cut. And
you know what causes burl?
I don't think there's a lot of talk about it, but basically it's environmental conditions, I think. I mean, it's not a fungus. I don't think it's a fungus that causes it, or a bacteria or nothing like that. I don't think they know, because the tree's not going to tell them.
Somebody knew there'd be tree farm.
Right.
But the big leaf maple is about the best burling tree by far.
Is big leaf maple considered to be one of the hard maples?
No, it's
Okay.
no harder than ambrosia maple.
Okay, I didn't know.
It's a really nice turning wood. Really nice turning wood. And the burls are such odd shapes, and the bark goes in and out, that your best turn them as natural edge bowls, and they will sell. People will get scared to death of them. There's no reason to be scared of a natural edge bowl.
Scared of the turners.
Yeah, a lot of turners say, I don't know what I would do with that. Well, this is not big leaf maple, but here's an old natural edge bowl.
What is that?
Oh, this is a cottonwood burl. The cottonwood that people say you can't turn.
It's soft and hairy, but if you can,
This is a nice little bowl. I'm not going to talk about cottonwood, but I brought this little piece because, well, just for fun.
I think it's cool.
Okay, through all these woods, so does anybody have any particular wood you want me to talk about that I might know something about?
Sweet.
Sweet gum? That's a pretty good choice. Sweet gum is, it's a really interesting species. If you go to the sawmill and just look down the rows of sweet gum, the hearts look just so different. It's just amazing what the wood looks like. So we're gonna have to skip Spalty and find me sweet gum on here.
Yes, I don't know where it is.
It's labeled sweet gum. I got some samples.
Got it?
Yep. All right. That's the kind of sweet gum that I look for.
Dark part, light, separate.
Well, just, if you look at these, if you look at it really close, it almost looks like a skyscraper. And this really turns out pretty nice. I showed this picture to a guy in Georgia one year, and he bought all 7 pieces that were on the table. Here's a piece of sweet gum, Spalted. Sweet gum is just absolutely got so much moisture in it, it's hard to believe how much moisture is in it. And it will physically spalt under the wax.
So that is spalting?
That's spalted sweet gum.
Is that the same as red gum?
Yeah. Sometimes my ex-partner would call it red gum. He said it sounded better to the industry. He calls it red gum on eBay. It's sweet gum.
It's also liquid amber, right?
Some people call it false walnut. Some people call it false walnut. There's a piece back there, Glenn. Find it and bring it up here if you would. Sweet gum is not a particularly stable wood. I thought I had 2 pieces up here. Yeah. This one's got bugs in it. There's another piece. Spalted sweet gum. It's been on the shelf so long that it actually, these pieces actually, the fungus kept them together. I had to drop them on the floor to separate them. But you know, it's pretty attractive. And this is spalted. This has also got beetles in it too. Probably. Yeah, there's a, if you look at this kind of damage here, this powder post beetle damage. Once you, I'll pass it around. But that's powder post beetle damage there. So I got powder post beetles in my house.
Maybe the smoke will come out.
The smoke didn't get them out. I got to get somebody here to get them. It's really unstable though. You really got to leave sweet gum a lot thicker than you normally would because it's really going to warp pretty bad. Well, that's good. That's good. I mean, I've got some pieces of sweet gum that I've turned that warped a lot but didn't crack. One thing you might consider, I didn't talk about this, and I meant to. It was in my notes. Is drying wood. Okay, there's an awful lot of ways you can dry wood. I boil everything. I mean, every piece I turn, I boil if I can get it in my pocket. Okay, you can microwave it. You can put it in denatured alcohol, where the alcohol replaces all the water, the feed water and the down water. Then when you pull out DNA, the alcohol evaporates quickly. And you can also put it in, I got one customer who puts it in a soup, what he calls a soup. And there's a brand name for this stuff.
Penacro.
No, not Penacro. That's a hard one, really.
Yeah. Well, it's the places.
Cactus juice, is that what it's called? I don't know, but he uses cactus juice. He said he can dry anything in 2 weeks.
Dish soap?
Well, I've heard of that too. I don't know if that's a good way of drying it out. But the best example I can think is at the Virginia Symposium, when was that, 4 or 5 years ago? We sold a block to a guy who came to the symposium and picked up at 6 inches ambrosia maple, 6 inches thick. And that guy cored that thing and he had 3 finished bowls in 6 weeks. And he dried it in DNA. Denatured alcohol. But what I do is, I boil it 1 hour, this is on the internet, 1 hour for every inch of thickness. Leave it in the water, let it cool in the water. I take it out for about 3 days and put it in a paper bag and then change the bag once or 3 days. And then I start putting it in the microwave.
Now, this is the first turn bowl, or this is the blank?
Boil, rough turn boil. Once you boil it and you brought it out of the water, wait about 3 days, start putting that thing in the oven. And don't ever let it get hot. When it starts, I use 15-second increments and I just put it on high. You know, some people in the internet say, you know, only use it on the defrost cycle and all this other stuff. And I just put it in for 15 seconds. If it's not warm, I run it for another 15 seconds. If it's not warm, I run it for another 15 seconds. And the last bowl I made was a mimosa bowl. I think you got a picture of it. I turned that from green log to a finished bowl in 8 days. And I boiled it and then I microwaved it. And every time it gets warm, I just take it out and let it cool off on the counter. And then when you go back into the kitchen and check it, it's not room temperature. You just leave it there and just keep going by it and put it back in. And I finally stopped at 3.5 minutes. So I knew it was dry.
Now, I think it was Trent mentioned microwaving, but he leaves it in the microwave. In other words, you drive the moisture out. Now it's kind of like a fog in your microwave. Leave it in.
That's a good idea, but I never had to, you know, I don't turn enough to do something wrong.
And then use a different microwave.
I don't learn from my lessons because I don't do it enough to do something wrong.
Well, he said that because then some of the moisture comes back in, but that's good. And then you heat it again, or microwave it some more, but leave it in. Don't take it out so that
It's just like everything I said, you know,
Yeah.
Everybody's different.
everybody's different and wood's
I know, I'm
different.
trying to
He may be
learn
only be
what
talking
works
about
best.
one particular species of wood for all we know.
Yeah.
I know you can take it out of the microwave and put it on the counter. If you pick it up, there's a water ring
Yeah.
underneath it. If you turn it over, there's a water ring underneath it. In 5 minutes, there's a water ring underneath it.
Right.
So the water's getting out. So I think some woods probably do. I did a lot of woods like that, but I had a piece of red eucalyptus, and the third time I pulled it out of the microwave, it had already started to check.
Sure.
So I put super glue on it, took it to the basement, and never tried it again. And the cracks didn't go anywhere, but I super glued them and I didn't try to dry it anymore.
Right.
So every piece of wood is different. But sweet gum can be attractive, but it can be plain Jane, and it can be very attractive, but there's just so many different things about sweet gum and just so many different looks that you get.
Two trees side by side.
Oh yeah, and you get the same thing with ambrosia maple. I guess I can just tell stories. I was sawing about 4 years ago for a neighbor who's dead now, and he had this maple tree. He was sawing to have boards, and they were really nice, wormy boards, really nice. And Johnny he saw me looking at it. He says, "Mike, you want it, don't you?" I said, "Well, Johnny," I said, "I'll just take that tree that was standing right beside this one. That one had, this one's got plenty of worms. That one probably got plenty of worms too." So later on, I don't know, a couple of weeks later or something, I cut that other tree down. Didn't have one evidence of wormholes nowhere. Completely devoid of worms. And it wasn't more than 6 feet away.
So you think that's the insect happening to land on that tree, laying its eggs,
I
and
don't have
worms
any
going
idea.
to work?
I don't have any idea. I just,
And not
you
feel?
go to the sawmill and there'll be a big old long row of 1,000 logs and 2 of them will look nice. You go back a week later and they've cut that whole row and there's another row there and 50 of them will look nice. So I don't know where they come from. I don't follow them out of the woods. I'm up in Virginia today. We're up there marking, this guy that I'm with is a forester and he marks telephone poles. His factory in Virginia makes telephone poles. So they buy the straight poles and then take them in, they debark them and then they kiln dry them and then they treat them with CCA or something. And we're walking through and we're going to mark all these poles. And we go right by this one ambrosia maple that's big around. This is as nice as anything I ever gotten at the sawmill. Just laying in the middle of the woods. They just cut it down and we're going to haul it up. So you just don't really know. That's why I don't mess with sweet gum much, because it's got a bad rap, I guess I should say. It's got a bad rap. You know, it's so common around here, you probably don't want to turn it. I don't want to turn it. I want to turn something neat. Not just sweet gum, but if I find these kind of logs, then I'll turn it.
So Mike,
Bob?
what's the history of all these bowls behind you?
All these bowls, these are a few of my bowls. Most of my bowls are packed up in South Carolina. But I have a few bowls up here that I turn, and a lot of ones rough turned up here that I rough turn. Some of these are Bill Wallace's bowls. If y'all don't know Bill kind of makes a living turning bowls and doing carving, and he also raises Angus beef. And a few of these bowls are belong to a guy named Jim Baldinger, who's the guy I was just talking about, the forester. And then a few of these bowls I bought in Oregon. We're not going to have time, but this little piece right here, it's really attractive wood in it. This is called cascara, whatever that is. I've never seen a tree growing, but all the damn pieces look like this. This is different.
It looks different.
This orange is not real. The other thing about the West Coast is they all turn with screws. Almost every one of them, you think they didn't make chucks out west. They turn with screws. And what really, I won't say that word. What really bends me out of shape is they put this stupid ass label on the bottom to hide the screw. And I've literally taken a few of these things and tried to turn the screw hole out, and I just get scared. If they turn them, they just, I don't know, they just like to turn with screws. And there's a wood here. Look at that label. Big screw. This is a wood called Empress. I don't have a clue what it is, but I think it's Chinaberry.
Empress,
Empress. It's written on there.
like Lady Emperor.
E-M-P-R-E-S-S.
Okay, an Empress tree is getting more and more popular around here as a shade tree, but it's the one that has great big leaves, and
That's a princess tree.
and in the springtime it's got the little spikes with the purple flowers on.
I don't know. This looks a lot like a Chinaberry. The color and the grain pattern looks a lot like Chinaberry. But that's it. That's
So
what it's
there's 90 different species.
This is a, so that was, those bowls I bought. This is the bowl that I turned. This is probably the bowl I'm the proudest of. I keep carrying it around in my truck and getting scratched and beat up. This is a piece of big leaf maple. This is called, some people call it blister figure, some people call it bubble figure. This is really hard to find. I was sawing a big leaf maple log that I brought back from the West Coast. I'd already sawed 20 of them, and I put this log in a sawmill and I cut one side off of it, and I cut the second side off of it, and I could see the bubble figure. It only went 3 inches on one side only, and that's what this came out of. So, I mean, there's nothing, I don't put stuff on my pieces like, decorations or whatever. That's a really nice big leaf maple piece. Okay, so did I answer your question on sweet gum? It can be really attractive. I mean, I don't mess with it unless it's really different.
That, I got one, most of the inside is a mottled brown stuff.
Yeah,
I really think that's an interesting piece.
yeah. Okay, go ahead. Yes.
Red mulberry.
There's another piece of sweet gum, look at that. That's the picture that sold to 7 blanks. The guy saw that picture.
I'll think of it.
Those are 3 inches thick. 8 by 8 by 3s. There's a close-up of it, look at that.
So how do you price your stuff? Is it based on its rarity and its uniqueness? You must have some flavor for it now. You've been doing this for years.
Yeah, I'm familiar with board footage. So I usually, these pieces are, those are 8 by 8 by 3s, and that's got 1.33 board feet per piece. So I have figure in mind that I sell it for. You know, so I just multiplied it by 1.33. I started, actually I sell some wood at $20 a board foot, some of this highly figured big leaf maple. And I have a competitor that sells it at $35 a board foot. I sell holly at $24 a board foot. Craft Supplies told me that holly was selling for upwards of $75 a board foot.
It's so pretty and nice to turn.
It is. Yeah. So I just group most of my woods in 3 categories: $8, $10, and $12 a board foot, and sell them like that. There's more that just amazing. I mean, I look hard for logs like that. All right, what do I do? How do I get back
To what?
to the
Hit the X.
I'm sorry, y'all. I'm just not very.
That's okay, we
Where
already.
do you want to go?
I'm gonna go back to the master listing, I think. Oh. Well, anyway.
Still there.
Killed it.
Right over there.
I'm lucky to even get them on the flash drive.
You did close it. What do you, give me the name of the folder you want.
Go to Poplar.
That's where we were, all right.
We didn't go to Poplar. We were in Poplar. There you go. This is Poplar. That's Poplar. A lot of minerals in it. That's the only kind of poplar I cut. And they are really hard to find too. They don't. That has to be a yard tree out west. Here it's a wood tree. So, I mean, what I mean by wood tree is it's natural in the forest. A yard tree is a tree that's planted in the yard. Like a Lebanon cedar, they don't grow in the woods at all. They're all yard trees. This is what we call mineral stain poplar. It comes in orange, blue, green, purple, yellow. I mean, anything and everything. Every tree is a little bit different, and they are really hard to find. But you probably got them in your yard if you fertilize your yard. The best, the poplar is normally white sapwood, green hardwood. That's normal poplar. Okay, and almost everything you see at the sawmill is going to be green hardwood with white sapwood. Almost everything. I had a tree, the tree service guy brought me. It was 4 feet in diameter, and that tree was blue from the root to the very top of the tree. Most amazing thing I've ever seen. Just absolutely beautiful. Will it hold that color? If you let it get the UV light, it won't. UV light is going to change every color you hope to save to a brand. You can put UV finish on it, maybe get a few extra months or something. Just when you get a nicely colored piece, then wrap it up in a pillowcase and just put it away. It'll look like that when you take it out again. But if you put it on the mound, the UV light will finally get to it. And I don't think they've ever solved that problem. Every once in a while you'll see them write up something about that, but there it is. Look at those poplar pieces. Those are 10 by 3s, 10 by 10 by 3s. I haven't had a nice poplar log, and there's more like the green color, the heart. That's it. All right.
Do you have any of that at your property?
If I do, it's change color.
Oh, okay.
All right, now. Oh, I know what I do. Okay, I'm figuring this out.
Lower left. Yeah.
Yep. How come it won't move?
Click right below it. Just below the bar. Slide down a little bit lower. Slide down before trying to click. Slide down below it. Now click once.
More.
There you go.
You got it.
That's everything that's in your folder.
Now look up on the list. See you.
Oh, I was going to do the spalk here. I want to talk about the spalk.
Double click.
Okay.
You're flying now.
Yeah, that's a piece of maple. You see all the fungus growing out of the end of that thing?
Yep.
Boy, I thought I had a gold mine here. I got another piece just like it. So I put it on a sawmill this week and I sawed it up. And I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like. Spalting can go too far fast. Okay, and I don't keep any kind of records about how long I had a piece laying in the woods. I put some magnolia in the woods because I've seen some spalta magnolia really pretty. I had some really pretty fungus growing on it, but it was just no good. Okay. Yes?
When you see the stuff on the outside, typically the spalding, I was told, it's gone too far because that's the fungus trying, it's already leaving because
You think that's gone too far?
It feels light.
It is light.
Get that other piece.
Yeah. I would say,
Both these pieces,
yeah,
I didn't get much out of that log,
right,
but both of these pieces came out of that log.
right.
Look at this.
Yeah. The spalding is there, but it's also probably a little past.
Now what happened? Oh, there you are. Okay. I talked to him and he said he could turn this.
Oh, I think it's cool.
But I want to show you what the sucker looked like. That's the end of it. There's the other end of it. Had all kind of fungus growing out the end of it.
Yeah.
All right, here's the pieces laying on the ground. Some of it's got nothing in it. Nothing in that. Nothing in that.
So it's not coming out, it's going in.
We'll take that piece right there.
It's growing from the end. It's a screw from one end.
Yeah.
And you'd have to be a good turner to make that work. Because that is soft to the fingernail.
Funky.
But he said he could turn it.
Yeah.
By the way, that's Bradford pear. Right there.
Wow, there's that curve.
It's laying in my yard. It's curly. Yeah, look at this. I've never seen a Bradford pear that wasn't curly. Never.
I haven't seen that much of it, so.
And I got some spalted pieces that are really nice. It took them 2 years to spalt. And I guess because it's a fruit wood, it wouldn't rot, so it's spalted. I think that's all that's in here. It is.
I have some bread prepared at home that we cut up and spread some stuff on the ends, left the mark on it, stabilize on the lid. It's no Dallas.
There's a male or female Bradford pear. One has the real long thorns on it. I think it's the male one.
No, female.
Is it the female one?
That's all the pictures.
It's just, the Bradford pears are a clone tree, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's just that if they ever breed, they come off and
Wow.
they have thorns and everything
Real
else.
heavy thorns.
They are really
I mean,
weak.
that-
They're
Oh,
really,
yeah.
they're
Oh,
really
yeah.
weak.
They'll
They're a
hurt
weak
you.
tree. Really weak tree.
Yeah, so it's not really a
All right, so let me run
commercial
through.
Bradford pear, but it's what came from a Bradford pear.
Wow.
This is, I'm just gonna go, I don't have any more pictures.
That thing.
This piece here, I get my Claro walnut from the walnut orchards in California. And the Claro walnut actually becomes the rootstock for the English walnut tree that we buy at Christmas time in the nut section of grocery stores. So they graft the English walnut tree to a Claro walnut stump. And there's a graft line right there.
That's a graph line?
Yep. I get quite a few pieces, not a lot of pieces like that, but I get some pieces like
What
that.
is that?
This is the English walnut. It's usually much more figured and gets cut for gun stocks. And this is the Claro, which tends to be, there's nothing I can do with this piece, so I just decided to use that as a.
Is it weak there,
Huh?
Is it weak there?
Now we can all. It just comes out perfect if you turn a bowl out of it. Really looks nice.
Mike,
Yep.
what is that piece on the end there? You say you got a wave on it?
Where's that? Over here? Over here?
Yeah.
This is actually this is a piece of persimmon. And we got 2 logs about 4 years ago that had bands in them. Persimmon is a ebony family, and that's probably where oftentimes when you cut persimmon, you get black streaks in it, especially around the heart. And it's funny looking stuff. I mean, it just looks like paste wax in the middle of a persimmon log. But this is a piece that obviously turned 5 years ago that I never got back to doing. Any other questions up here? That's the driftwood class that Bill's going to be teaching. I love this kind of stuff. Just take a piece of driftwood, and I picked this up on the beach myself. And actually had a big long stalk right here. And we cut that off, and we're gonna carve this and make a piece out of that.
Down toward the end here, there's a red one. What's that?
That's one of Bill Wallace's pieces. That's just made, no, it's butternut. $324.
Does he color it?
Oh yeah, colored it. Yeah, butternut is usually referred to as a white walnut.
And he drilled all those holes.
I'm sure he did. And butternut doesn't grow around here at all. They bring it, Fleet Sport brings it down from Maine. It's supposed to be a good carbon. Yeah, this is a really nice piece.
Makes great ones for Chelsea.
Yes.
Harvest red mulberry.
I've got, I don't know the difference between red and white, but that's a piece of mulberry. It's a nice open grain wood. It's yellow. And this one's probably been turned for 5 years. It's been on a shelf in the basement with no light, and it stayed yellow. But I can promise you, it would eventually turn brown.
It gives you a nice tan.
But it's a really nice open grain wood.
Burnt really well too.
Huh? There's another piece of salted pecan. And actually, I can report success. I can probably do this most of the time now. Not turn the bowl, but I can make salted pecan. And I've done it 2 years in a row, and it's really turned out nice. In pricing, I get big bucks for the salted pecan. I got people screaming for it. One guy in Kentucky sent me some pictures. He said, "Here's 2 of the latest salted pecan pepper mills I made." He said, "This is the most amazing piece of wood I have ever seen in my whole life."
Great.
I don't know. They don't cost that much to me, but he really likes it. Let's see what else we got. Box elder. Really hard to find around here.
Give about 5 minutes, Mike.
Okay.
I got some left for you.
Now, we haven't talked about orientation. How would you turn this? Which would you make the bottom and which would you make the top?
Let me see the other side. Oh, how we make the colored side the bottom.
That's right. In most cases, if the figure doesn't go all the way through, you want the figure, you don't want to turn through all the red wood. So you turn it like this.
Right, you're going to see it on the inside, you're going to see it on the bottom.
That's especially important with the big leaf maple. I think I got an example here. Yeah. Look at this side. Isn't that really pretty? Can you see that curl? Look at that side. Nothing.
Top.
Nothing. So that's the top. And that big piece that we passed around that had the blister on it, that's exactly the way that piece of blister looked. Had all this blister on the bottom, and all the top was straight grain. So if I'd have turned it and tried to keep the blister in by turning through it, it would have all gone. And all I would have had, I had a little ring of blister around the edge, and that would have been it. So that's orientation is kind of important. You can usually look at a block and tell where the figure's going. You look at this one, that's a really nice face, but it goes all the way through on that corner. This side, it goes all the way through. But you're going to round this off and you're going to round that off, so it's only going through right there. And then there's no figure here at all. It doesn't go through, and that figure only goes through just a little bit, and that figure doesn't go through it all either. So if you turn that and turn down through this, you would just spend a whole bunch of money and you wouldn't have anything to really speak of at all. So that's kind of important. Let's see what else we got over here. There's a piece of spalted box elder. It's spalted under the wax. Not much red. This is the kind of box elder that we usually get around here. It's really pretty damn tough to find red box elder. Most box elder is basically pure white. Most of us, you go to sawmill and Jim will say, they got box elder up there. I go up there, every last one will be white. It's a maple, by the way. Dries out really quick and really fast. Let me talk about holly, and then we'll call it quits. As all of you know, I probably maybe know or not know, I spend a lot of time with holly. Drives me crazy. This holly is pure, almost pure white. Okay. And I get $10 a stick for this at the shows. And that's only $24 a board foot. And it just goes like hotcakes, because I'm probably the only guy I think in the country that can keep it white. And I do it by freezing it. This piece of wood has been in the freezer for over a year. And the ends aren't sealed. I don't seal the ends in the freezer because it dries so slow I won't check. But we have, let's see, it's still drying. This actually used to be a long piece. And I can't even get 3 inches to work. I pulled 3 inches out of the freezer after a year, and it's got a black heart. I don't know where it comes from. It's just, I have, what have I done to this stuff? Well, I put it on fans for 24 hours a day for a year to try to dry it out. I've put it in a fungicide solution that the sawmills use to end-coat their lumber. That doesn't do any good. Still turns blue, still turns gray. I did 3 or 4 things before I was settled on freezing. So I got 4 freezers right now full of holly.
You freeze it for a year?
At least a year. I finally started writing on the side of it when I put it in the freezer. So I just took out, and if you pack it in there too tight, it won't dry out. So you can't just pack your freezer full of holly, expect it all to dry out, because you can pull the pieces out, and this will be nice and light, and this will be heavy as hell.
So you stick around it?
Yeah. So you just take out a few pieces and try to spread them out. So it's a holly. I don't know. I think holly is almost all sapwood. You can't cut a holly tree down and see a heartwood at all. No differentiation whatsoever. I think it's almost all sapwood. It's really susceptible to a gray stain or a blue stain, just really aggravating. And when it's above 65 degrees, that stain goes rampant. And it won't take but a couple of days. And it's the lumber stain, the wood stain or whatever.
When you cook.
What they do is, most of the commercial quantities, holly grows really good in North Carolina, where we live. It grows, I mean, have you ever seen a holly log 2 foot in diameter? A logger called me down to his house one day, he had 6 of them. 2 foot diameter. Big holly log, probably 150 years old. But if it gets above 65, you can forget it, because when you saw it, you're spreading fungus. And it gets above 65 degrees, it just goes crazy. And it's almost, but it turns really good. People love it for Christmas ornaments, birdhouses. And I do a few big blocks, but I like to sell white holly. And I'm not like my partner. He'll put stuff on eBay that's black and blue stained, and people buy it, and it's beyond me why they buy it. But,
Well, it's prettier than spalted maple.
well, yeah, I guess sort of. But blue stain and gray stain is pretty common in holly. Pretty common.
Does it matter when you cut it?
Yeah. You got to always cut it as close you can to the dead of winter when it's cold. If you got any hope of doing it. The commercial holly comes from Pennsylvania, and the guy buys the trees standing. The loggers log around the trees and leave the trees standing. The guy goes back in and really late fall or early winter and cuts the trees down, saws them up within 24 hours, and puts them in a vacuum can and tries to get them to stay white that way. And if you I buy a lot of wood from World Timber down close to Jacksonville. And you go look at their commercial holly they buy from a guy in Pennsylvania, it's not white. But they call it white, but it's not white. And this doesn't always work. It's wood. It doesn't always work. The first time I ever pulled a 3x3x12 out of the freezer, and it was really pretty. I mean, it was pure white all the way around. and I cut a 1/4 inch off the end of it, had a big black spot in the middle of it like that. And I don't know what it did. I don't have a clue what it did. So, anyway, so holly, if you want 2-inch holly, I can provide you 2-inch white holly, but I can't do much whiter than that. Okay, let's see. I guess we're out of time. Any final questions?
Good job.
Well, I appreciate